Hi, I'm Jack Canfield with Success Profiles, and I want to welcome you to another one of our expert interviews. And I'm pleased to have in studio with me today Dr. Rakesh Sinha. Dr. Sinha is a laparoscopic and robotic surgeon, one of the world's leading experts on fibroids, and he holds 2 Guinness World Records, the laparoscopic removal of the world's largest fibroid and of the heaviest uterus. He's the past president of the Indian Association of Gynecological Endoscopists, and he's been a keen teacher and a laparoscopic trainer for nearly 2 decades. He's initiated the safe endoscopy movement in India. And Dr. Sinha is a licensed practitioner also of neuro-linguistic programming, better known as NLP, and he's also a marathon runner. And drawing from his surgical experiences in life and death situations, he motivates people to achieve excellence in their own professional and personal goals. He's been able to deconstruct success into simple, easy-to-grasp principles and components. And as a mind management expert, he has conducted workshops and programs for medical institutes, for corporations, and for management institutes. And he's trained CBI officers, that's the Central Bureau of Intelligence, like our FBI in the United States, and the senior police officers in India. And we're all anxiously awaiting the release of his new book, Anatomy of Success. Now, earlier in our conversations, you told me a story about a C-section. I'm really curious if you could kind of unpack that for us and tell us that story on air here.
Jack, before I started laparoscopy and 3D robotic surgeries, I did conventional obstetric work. And in 1986, I was performing a C-section, a cesarean section, for an air hostess. She was working for Air India. And this woman had had some previous surgery. She had scar tissue, and that is why we had to do a C-section. The thing about cesarean sections is that once anesthesia is given, within approximately 7.5 minutes, you must deliver the baby. So we take a little time to clean up the patient, paint and drape, put in catheters. And then from the time I start taking an incision on the abdomen, I have about 2.5 minutes to deliver the baby. If I take longer, there is a possibility that the baby will aspirate some fluid into the lungs,
Right.
and the baby can actually drown inside. I started this surgery, cut open the abdomen, and as I went through the layers, the skin, the subcutaneous fat, the rectus sheath, I realized there was no space. The anesthesiologist was there, the pediatrician, the child specialist was waiting to take over the baby. And it was 60 seconds, the pediatrician reminded me, and I was nowhere close to delivering the baby. I thought of everything that I had read about cesarean sections. I was a postgraduate teacher. I had been teaching postgraduate. So I started recollecting what was it that I would tell the students if I was to teach them how to handle such situations. And I was nowhere close to opening the uterus and delivering the baby. The anesthetist said, Dr. Sinha, 90 seconds up. And I started getting worried. I just didn't know how to go ahead. I kept asking for the mop and the hemostats and the diathermy, and the time went on. So my question here is, do I blame the surgeon who had done the previous surgery and say, hey, not my fault, you didn't do the earlier surgery well, and so I'm in this state? Or do I say, okay, I'm tired today, I'll get up tomorrow morning and start this surgery again? Or do I say that, can I Google in this state, as to how do I deliver the baby in this condition? 120 seconds up, and I could actually feel beads of sweat, flowing down my forehead. I started imagining the worst things that could happen to the baby. I started wondering, what do I tell the husband of this woman who was sitting out, all ready to become a father? What do I tell this woman when she comes out of anesthesia? Hey, why did I lose the baby if I had lost the baby? And about 130 seconds later, I split open the uterus and delivered the baby. The baby was not breathing. The baby had not cried, and the baby was limp. I handed over the baby to the pediatrician, and until the pediatrician resuscitated, I just could not continue with the surgery. And it was only after a few seconds that I could hear a few gasps of the baby. And then the pediatrician said, the baby is fine, Dr. Sinha, continue with the surgery. And then the baby cried. And Jack, I tell you, I nearly cried, hearing the baby's cries. So I learned a few lessons during this episode. The first one was we must become unstoppable. Whatever project we take up, whatever we take up, we should just not stop. The second was failure is not an option. How could I start a surgery like this and expect to fail? And the third lesson, or mantra as I call it, was it isn't over until I win. So there was no stopping over. I think the important thing here is what are the thoughts that you start thinking of in such situations? What are the images that you build up in your mind? And what action do you take? So I think you mentioned this in your book also, the thoughts, images, and action. And that becomes a very important element in how do you tackle and how do you take decisions in such situations.